Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests. Hey everybody, you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford, and today we have Dewayne Knight on the phone with us. How you doing, Dwayne?
I'm hanging in there. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Got out, did a little bit of hunting this morning. Managed to get one gray squirrel knocked out. Man, I can't say how much I like having that thermal in my pocket. I don't know if you hunt with one, but uh,
It's nice.
I don't
It's
I
nice.
don't think I'd have found that squirrel. And instead, I walked right around and snuck around and pretty well headshot him and knocked him out in one shot, and it was just made it too easy. Uh,
Perfect. Perfect.
but no, made some den trees and headed back to the truck. I think they were starting a little bit early this morning. Uh,
All right. I hadn't hunted since Jamestown. I kind of threw all my work on the back burner and put all my focus in that, and now I got to get caught up. So,
well, it sounds like it kind of paid off while you were in Jamestown. Why don't you tell us kind of how that went?
well, we had a little bit of luck up there. You know, I hunted my Wheezy dog. She's 13 months old. She was off a big motor Asher, and uh a dog a lot of people probably never heard of, but her name's Mert. It's a litter mate sister to the Raylan dog, which is, half brother, half sister cross. And she 13 months old, like I said. And we just I don't like to hunt them that young and a hunt that big, but she'd be too old next year, so it was go big or go home. We just had to go for it. So, and it just panned out in our favor. We had a little bit of luck, I feel. And, this competition stuff, it's just, you're going to have some breaks to win. I mean, I would venture to say that 70% of the time, the best dog don't win. And that's myself, my dogs included. I've seen a lot of times where, I've been beat by lesser dogs, in my opinion, and I know that most people that competition hunt has also. But we did okay. Our first round, we drew the Blade dog. I think Mr. Tommy Mears owns him, and we had the Black Hawk dog. If I'm not mistaken, the Loudons owned that dog, but Christian Pritt was handling it. And Mike Powers was a non-hunting judge. We turned the loose. It was a lackluster cast for sure. I think those dogs got in there and treated a squirrel, and it was just a rough cast for me. There didn't seem to be a lot of game in there where we was, but anyway, my little old dog, she I think she had 400 circle, and she just stayed out of trouble. And those other dogs took some minuses, and I squeaked that one out. And, we had a non-hunting judge. Mike Powers was going to spectate that cast, and he judged for us. And I think the second round, I drew the Lemon Jade dog owned by Merle Seeley. And that guy's name is Anthony. If he hears this, and I can't remember his last name, I apologize. But he is handling for Merle, and Eric Wally was a non-hunting judge. I took a minus right out of the truck. I got a little too quick on the too quick on the trigger, and I treated her before she was ready. And she wasn't as ready as I was to be treated anyway. So anyway, I jumped on her pretty quick and took a minus right out of the truck. And anyway, me and him was back and forth, and I think I I know I took another minus a little later on, but we treed. I think Weezy had 500 plus, 200 minus, and 300 circle, and won that cast. But she had another squirrel. It was like a foot outside the search area that I didn't get to score, and of course we made it to the finals, and Richard Reese was the non-hunting judge. I drew the Ringo dog of Merle Seeley's. I think he's a USDC Junior World Champion. And I drew the Wiley dog. And we cut loose, and the dogs all got treed pretty close. But they was all split. But, they was probably all in seeing distance of each other. Circled us all up. We cut again. I think we all got circled up again. And if I'm not mistaken, if it was that tree or the next, Samuel took a minus with the Wiley dog. I think Samuel jumped on him a little quick, But anyway, we all got together there and got all dogs handled. And we cut loose, and they went over the hill, and they hit a hot squirrel. And let me back that up. Merle had treed and had a squirrel. So I think Merle had 100 plus and 200 circle maybe. Samuel probably had 300 or 400 circle and 100 minus at that point. And I had probably 200 circle, 300 circle, something like that. And anyway, we all was handled. So we all cut loose, and the dogs went over the hill, and they all got on one real hot, and Samuel took first, Merle took second, and I just kind of held back, let my dog settle in. I went in for a quarter. And anyway, we got in there, and my dog was split off from Merle and Samuel's dog. So I got 100 out of it. Well, they searched their tree and didn't find the squirrel. And when they come over there and searched my tree, she had the squirrel in her search area. So I got 100 plus on that. And I think at that point, I don't know, Merle took a minus. He treated his dog deep or something. And anyway, Merle took a minus. So at this time, Samuel's got a minus, Merle's got a minus, and Merle's got a squirrel and Samuel don't. But, I got a squirrel, no minus. And anyway, well, I get treed again, and they're treed. And, I circled up on that last tree, and then we went in there to search Samuel's tree, and he was circled up, and Merle was treed a little deeper. And we went in there to Merle's tree, and he was circled up, and they cut back loose, and I think there was 5 minutes left in the hunt, and I just stayed on the leash. I was in pretty good shape, so I didn't want to have to run my dog down. And that's kind of how it went. She was crippled up after the second round, and Samuel gave me a shot of Dex to help her get her leg back on the ground. And, so I appreciated that from him,
Mm-hmm.
Well, we was probably going to go home. We was thinking about withdrawing, because, man, she was in foul shape that morning. But it all worked out. I guess it was just, that's the way it was supposed to work,
Yeah.
But I said it in the interview, I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination that she's a better dog than those other dogs. But she just stays out of trouble. She's just a pretty clean dog and stays out of trouble. You couldn't tell it from the second round because she took those 2 minuses, but I mean, she traded enough squirrels to get me over the hump, and I'm pretty proud of her.
I'd say you ought to be.
We still got a long ways to go. She's not a finished dog by no means, and I don't know how she's gonna finish out, but right now I like her. She's just an honest squirrel dog, and she's pretty clean, she's gonna keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, it sounds like she's pretty nice enough to win a Junior World hunt. So, but no, kind of one of the things I was wanting to talk to you about is starting dogs, because not only did you win the junior hunt, but you also had a dog that you had raised that made it to the final cast of the senior hunt as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that was my old Raven dog. She was off of Terry Snyder's stuff up there in Batesville, Mississippi. She was off of on the top side. She was off of the Copper dog, and if I told you for sure, I'd be lying one way or the other. But I think that the Copper dog was a son of Bill, which was that Briar Mountain breeding. I think that's correct. And the bottom side of Copper's pedigree was, I think it was the Jesse dog that Terry won a world hunt with. And the Rio, which was Raven's mama, I think she goes back to I may be wrong now. I haven't looked at those papers in a while, but I think she went back to some of that buck stuff that Terry did so well with. And but to a little backstory on her, I had a dog die up at Terry's house. I didn't have a starting pen at the time, and I got we made a cross down here, and anyway, we got rid of all the pups but one, and we kept him. He was a male, and he was real nice, and I had a chance to get a sister to him, so I got his sister back, and she was probably 12, 13 months old when I got her back. Never been through with green as grass, and I wanted to put her in a starting pen, just kind of get her treeing a little bit before because I was fooling with another dog at the time and didn't have time to really start two pups, then. Anyway, she died up at Terry's house. And Terry called and, told me about it and stuff. And I understood, I didn't want nothing from Terry. I told Terry he didn't owe me nothing, just whatever, And he offered to send my money back. I mean, he did everything in his power to make it right. And I wouldn't take his money. He said, well, I'm giving you a puppy. And I said, well, Terry, I don't want a puppy, you don't owe me nothing. I know things happen. I appreciated Terry calling me and telling me the truth. And anyway, he insisted on giving me a puppy. So I said, well, heck, I'll take it, So it was Raven. And, man, we started her up, and she was just I think I trapped 2 or 3 squirrels and turned them loose far and let her chase them up a tree and tree them and knocked them out to her. And that was about all it took for her. I mean, she was a very easy starting dog. Anyway, I kept her for, I don't know. I guess she was right at 2 years old when I sold her, but I got 5th in a OMCBA World hunt with her, and I got 2nd in another hunt. But anyway, when I took her on the road, she didn't seem like she traveled real well to me, and so I sold her to for that reason to Lee Langley. But and of course Lee, somebody offered him more money than he could turn down, and he sold her. But she was a really good. She just started real easy. Wasn't a lot of work involved in starting her. It's not really hard to get them to tree. It's the hard part is getting them to stay treed, and be clean and not mill around, and that's a slow process for me. That's killing squirrels. They seem to just clean up on their own a lot when you shoot them a lot of squirrels. I find that the dogs that you don't kill the game to and stuff like that is the ones that you have the most trouble. And this is just my opinion, what works for me. But when I'm bringing a pup along, killing game is really important. I had the Gojo dog he was leaving trees, hot footed as any dog I'd ever fooled with. And man, I wore out 2 pairs of boots starting that dog. I mean, he was just so hot footed and fast and covered so much country that he'd go in there and bark 10 or 15 times and he was gone, I mean, and it was tough. So it got to the point where when I cut him loose, I'd have my garment in my hand, and if I seen him going north and when he started making a swing to the west, I started flanking him, I tried to get in the direction he was headed, well, I'd get to him and heck, he'd have a squirrel. So I'd leash him and knock it out, and he started staying a little longer, staying a little longer, staying a little longer, staying a little longer. And the more I killed to him, the easier it was to get him to stay. And, and that's just my opinion. I feel like the more game you kill them, it fixes a lot of the problems,
So when you get one that's hot-footed like that you're messing with, do you try to do anything different other than just keeping up with them? Do you ever maybe try road hunting where you can stay closer to them while they're hunting or anything like that, or you just try to get to the tree before they leave them?
That's what I try to, because I'm limited to road hunting down here where I live. Like I told you earlier, like I got to drive an hour just about in any direction to get into really good hunting. And the road hunting is great when, if you got a dog that's kind of tracky and stuff like that. I find that the road hunting helps get their head up and things like that. But the people that can't road hunt, like me, for instance, when you start killing that dog game, and it's just my opinion, but I've noticed it, like the dogs that's, I've had dogs that you'd shoot game out to them and they might gum mouth it a few times and they was through with it. They didn't act like they was really like squirrel crazy, and and those was always a harder egg for me to crack than one that was just real game crazy. The dogs that seem like they really like the squirrels and they like having that squirrel shot out to them, they do things just different to me. Like they'll start getting their head up more, as they mature. They'll pick their head up and start, airing squirrels better if they have that ability. But if you got a dog that's real tracky, in my opinion, if you can't road hunt that dog to get his head up, when he's barking around or stuff like that, you got to go move that dog on, and and typically I just like to take a switch. I don't do much with a collar. I probably walk more than a lot of people like to or would, even because if my dog's sitting in there 300 yards barking around, I'm going to break my neck trying to get in there and move it on, especially when I'm bringing on a young dog. And I found that typically once you do that a few times, they'll know that they figure it out.
By barking around, you mean like if one was in there, you get close to him and he's not treed, he's just running around like trying to work out a track and kind of barking.
Right, exactly. And it's some people don't mind it, and it's different strokes for different folks, but I just don't like a real tracky dog. I like a dog that operates fast and it does things with some urgency, and typically those dogs that's tracky like that, on a bad day when the game ain't moving, they can grow up something up and get treed and it'll beat you, but it's just not my style of dog. I don't care for that. And this Wheezy dog that I just won a Junior World, she'll get tracky. I have to stay on her, I mean, but that's that, and staying treed is if that's, to me, if you're gonna have a competition type dog, it's just real important to have a dog that's gonna stay treed. Once I knock about 25, 30, 40 squirrels out to one, I start making them hold them trees 10 or 15 minutes. I'll hide in the woods and watch them. And I'll make them hold those trees. And, 20 minutes is about as long as I ever really do that. But
So what do
just
you do when you're working on one with that? Say you get in there and you're standing back to where you can see him, and 5 minutes in, that dog decides to pull off and go to looking for another one.
I'm gonna burn it. I'm gonna shock his guts out and
Gotcha.
put him back on that tree. And then. But once you make that correction, and it's you know, I take them back and I make them hold it a while, and they don't get to leave that tree. I give them a command to leave. You know, I went hunting with Tony Walters and some guys, John Saunders and some guys, and Tony Walters said something that made more sense to me than anything anybody ever said to me. He said that when he goes hunting, he's not worried about killing game. He's not worried about nothing. All he wants to do is make a correction. And like, if you think about it, like, you need to make correct. You don't want that dog to be perfect all the time, then go to a hunt and then something happens and he's never had to be corrected for it. Like, I guess, if you get to a hunt and you've never had to shock your dog for leaving a tree or something, or tracking around or something. Well, you get on a cast and your dog just all of a sudden bogs down, just barking around and he sits in there 10 or 15 minutes messing with something that he should have been treed 3 more times for. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to make those corrections, but Tony, when he said that to me, it just kind of resonated with me and like changed the way I think about things. Cause like, it's important to get those corrections made, especially bringing along young dogs, but now I look for a correction. If I go hunting, I want to make a correction, and, I feel like I got something accomplished if I get to make that correction, but it just kind of stuck with me, and now I'm not real big on setting my dog up for failure so I can correct him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to be aware of what that dog's doing where I can correct him, and, when it gets to a point where you can make those corrections while you're not looking at that dog, what that dog's doing, and you can make those corrections without actually seeing him, and then I think you headed in the right direction. But I learned a lot from all them guys, and I paid attention and I try, if a man can't learn from somebody, he ain't much good in my opinion. I think a guy's got to learn something every day,
Mm-hmm.
and these dogs will show you something every day if you paying attention. And
Yep.
because I don't near about know it all. I don't have all the answers and stuff.
I agree wholeheartedly. That's really the whole reason this podcast got started was just so it put pressure on myself to call and talk to people and try to learn from them.
That's a good thing, man. Back years ago when we was coon hunting and stuff, we didn't have social media and things like that. Like, heck, I didn't even have social media when the LMC was started. Like, I didn't know nothing about the LMC, and I hate I missed that. But it is what it is. But yeah, everything was through the bloodlines or the American Cooner or something, and man, when we was young, heck, all those guys Indiana was 1,000,000 miles away from where I was from, or Missouri or,
Mm-hmm.
the world was just so far away back in. And like, most of the stuff we learned, it was something our dads taught us and stuff, and which you know, a lot of the stuff that my dad taught me now that I'm older and got access to see things that I didn't get to see when I was young, and so that stuff that I learned back then, it really it wasn't the best way, but it was the only way he knew, to teach us.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always trained our own dogs. We never could afford to buy dogs, and stuff. And now I'm in a position in life where I can buy a dog if I want to, and I still don't buy them because it's just not my way in it. But
Well, let's do a little bit of talk about how you made this dog, the Wheezy dogs. Why don't we kind of start with where you started out with on scratch and what age you picked her up at, and just kind of walk us through how she started and what your process was with that.
well, I knew I wanted that blood, because it seems to be winners. I mean, it's had some controversy around it and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
anyway, those dogs are winners. I don't care what nobody says, or whatever. But that's stuff. That's just good stuff, in my opinion. But anyway, she had a terrible birthday, so I wound up starting her in May. So I did some summer hunting, and I was fortunate enough to, Lee Langley and Eric Wiley and a couple other guys. They helped me kill game to that dog this summer, and we basically did everything we did in the summer that we do in the winter. We was just fortunate enough to be able to kill game through the summer, and but saying that, I created some problems that I normally don't have to deal with because the scent's so bad and the conditions are so bad and dry and hot. Like, those dogs are really struggling to get treed in the summertime down here. Now, I don't know about up north or whatever, but anyway, she come into her first kill season this year. This is her first winter actually to be hunting and stuff. Well, when the conditions got good and the scent got good and everything, like, she could smell everything, where she was having to struggle to get treed this summer. Like, I felt like, and I may be wrong, but I felt like she smelled too much when the conditions got right. So I spent a lot of time with her being tracky and this, that, and another, getting her head up and all of that. But like I say, well, she's still a work in progress. But me and her still got a long ways to go before I'll be satisfied with her. I'm not satisfied with her. I mean, true enough, she did win a world hunt, and that's been a goal of mine for a long time. But she's still got a long ways to go. We're not. She's not near about right, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But we was just able to kill game this summer, and which is something that a lot of people struggle to do in the summertime. But we was able to, and but since it's got cold, she want to bog down and do things like that, and I've been working on that, and just I kept her singled out for the most part, and her first ever competition hunt was the Junior World Hunt in Jamestown. But I basically did just got her treeing and tried to kill her game, and was able to kill game this summer, and it worked. Stars lined up, but it did create some problems that I normally don't have to deal with.
Well, when we were talking before, you mentioned the way you start dogs is a little bit different than most. You felt like, and you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I own plumbing and septic tank business. So I'm out and about meeting people and doing things, and I trap a lot of game. I'll ask people if I can set some traps in their yards and catch squirrels, and I'll hide traps in town, around the park and stuff, and catch squirrels. But I'm flexible that I'm able to go by and check them pretty regular. Like if I'm working in town, I can get out there early in the morning around the park and hide my traps, and I'll go back there and check them 2 or 3 times a day. And anyway, I'll bring those squirrels home, and I got a place here in my yard. That's probably an acre and a half, and it's got one red oak tree out in the middle of it. And I don't like to do hang ups and things like that, but I like to put that squirrel on the ground and fire them dogs up on that, the pups up on those squirrels on the ground. And then I just open the trap and let the squirrel run. And I know what tree he's going to go to, because that's the way I point the trap, and that's the only tree there. So that's where the squirrel's going to go. Well, once he gets in that tree, he can't timber out of it or nothing. Like, some of them will jump out from time to time, but not very often, And so I send them to that tree. The dogs run that squirrel and run it up the tree. And if they tree it, I'll knock it out to them. If they don't tree it, I just put them up, put them back in the pen, and I've got another squirrel on my property. I've just relocated a squirrel is all I've done. And which I got a 2-acre training pen here that's I keep feeders and stuff in and things. And but I don't start my pups in that training pen. I don't leave dogs in that training pen and things like that. Like, I'll take my young pups in there and I'll let them go in there and hunt around. They'll get treed around them feeders. And basically the only reason I've got that pen is just to contain them. If they start leaving trees, I can get to them in there. So, but I just do the cage game thing, and I'll turn them squirrels loose. They tree them, I'll kill them. I do that about 5 or 6 times. And if a pup responds to it really well, then I'll start taking it to the training pen and walking it through the training pen. And every once in a while I'll shoot a squirrel in there, but I don't shoot many. And once they get where they hitting those feeders pretty consistently and treeing, like when I go to the gate and I turn them in there and they fire in there to a feeder and get treed, once they get where they're pretty consistent at doing that, then it's to the big woods then. But I don't try to put much of a handle on my dogs. I don't mind the pulling and stuff. I don't want to do anything to take the hunt out of one. And I'm not saying that will, but it's just been something that I hadn't really wanted to do, is I just don't want to chance it. It's not worth it to me. Mm-hmm. I'd rather deal with a pulling dog than risk running one, trying to get a handle on.
How many squirrels will you show a pup like that?
It depends. If that dog's pretty hot on that pup, if that dog's pretty fired up about that squirrel, and I turn that squirrel loose and that dog chases it up a tree, if I do that probably about 10 times is all I'm gonna do it. And then if that dog ain't trying to tree that squirrel or not barking up that tree at least a few times or interested in the tree and that, I'm not gonna waste a lot of time with worms has got to eat too, and you can feed a good one just like you can feed a bad one, and if you get a good bred pup, a good quality animal, most of that stuff comes easy. They're going to respond pretty well. In my opinion, like some dogs, you do it 1 or two times and locked down on it. Then I've seen some that, you have to really, really, about 8 or 9, 10 times before that dog ever trees. But I don't really have a set number, but I'm looking at one real, real hard after probably 10 squirrels. Like, you start wanting to make sure your rifle's oiled up.
Mm-hmm. What age are you
But
showing them squirrels like that? How old do you want one to be before you start showing it the cage squirrels?
man, to me, that just depends on the pup.
Are you normally trying to, depending on birthdays, or you wanting to wait till like you feel like the sending's getting better to try to start one, and then you'll start showing one once you try to start one?
Well, I'm not real concerned about the scent when I'm doing that, cause that dog sees that squirrel going, and he sees that squirrel go up that tree, and if the scent's bad, he still knows that squirrel went up that tree. You know what I mean? It's the
Mm-hmm.
only tree. It's the only place that squirrel can be. He knows that squirrel went up that tree. Now, whether he chooses to tree it or not, you know, I don't. That's I don't want them pups to tree a hang up, if that makes sense. I don't want them looking at that squirrel to tree. If I do things like that, I'm gonna let them tree their dog food and stuff like that. Things like that, make them speak for their food and stuff. But to me, intelligence. If I'm gonna pick a puppy and we like, I got a whole litter of pups on the porch, okay, and I start calling them pups, and they're all falling off of that porch and stuff, and just being clumsy pups, and you got that one pup that goes down the doorsteps. You know what I mean? To me, that was a smarter pup. Now I may be wrong. This is all my opinion, but like that pup that took the doorsteps was smarter than the pups that just dove off the porch, in my mind. Now, like I say, that's just my opinion, but I think intelligence has a lot to do with it. If that dog knows that squirrel went up that tree, I mean, you think that he knew to tree it,
Mm-hmm.
and not saying that like comes right away, but there's no other place it can be. And if he's tree minded like, he's seen it go up that tree. So, in my mind, but now, like 3-4 months old, that's usually the time I start doing that, and they usually start real fast. If it's a tree-minded dog, in my opinion. Now, everything I'm saying is just my opinion. It don't mean a hill of beans to anybody else, but it's just worked for me.
Yeah. So say you show a squirrel, and it doesn't tree it. How long before you're showing it another one?
I'll show it tomorrow if I can. If I can catch another one, I'll show it tomorrow. When I get it in my mind to start that dog and stuff, like everything's on borrowed time. Like I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to start that pup, and when like I said, I'll find another pup or whatever, and try to get it going. The good ones always make it easy, and that's my opinion, and that's been my general experience from coon hounds or whatever, squirrel dogs or whatever. The good ones, they always make it easy. They might not be all stars, but the good dogs, the smart ones, the intelligent ones and stuff, the tree-minded dogs, they always make it easy, in my opinion. Now, when you get them started treeing and doing things like making them go hunting and getting them started treeing is probably the easiest part of all of it to me. But if a dog's not going to hunt, there's just really not no way to fix that. I don't think. But I think getting them to tree is the easiest part. But like when you start getting a dog that's tracky and won't hunt or hunts for 30 minutes and then comes back around and wants to hang out with you and things like those are all the problems that's the hard ones to fix. So my dad always said he wanted one that was tree minded, but he wanted one that was too stupid to know when the squirrels wasn't moving.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted that sucker hunting, and it didn't matter what was going on. He wanted that dog hunting. And that's just, I heard another guy say that a few months ago, and it's just kind of always something stuck with me. You want a smart dog, but you want one that's got enough drive and go to not care what the game's doing. It's going to go find something. And those seem to be harder to come by. Like a good example of that dog was the Daisy dog that Bo Dooley won the Senior World with. Man, that heifer, she just hunted, and she went and found her a squirrel. It didn't matter what was going. I mean, we went into it. The game really wasn't moving, and she checked out and went and got something and had it. And to me, in my opinion, that's what you want of a dog, I'd rather that dog leave and go find some game that it can tree rather than pound the ground around me trying to grub something up, I mean, in my opinion, that Daisy dog was about as good a dog as you could ask for, in my opinion. She was just a super, super nice dog. Just get off and disappear and have a squirrel,
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the type dog I like. But
so on the Wheezy dog, did you have to work on anything else with her to get her ready once you got her treeing and she was going? Did she have any problems with jacking or just kind of getting her to cast and recut well, or any other problems you had to work with?
She was a real clean tree dog, I guess. She don't jack and chew, she stayed put real well. None of those are ever issues. She was tracky. And and I'll tell you an example. I'll give you a little example of the summer situation. Like, it was so hot. It was 100 degrees down here, and so we'd cut them loose and they'd go in there and tree. And if they had a squirrel, we would kill that squirrel and we'd put them up, because I mean, you couldn't hunt them. Like, you make one or two trees in the morning, maybe, and one in the evening if you're lucky. So this whole summer it was one and done. We'd fire in there, get tree, kill a squirrel, we'd put them up. And in my mind, I thought I was doing good. One and done. Put her up with a squirrel in her mouth. I thought I had it figured out. Well, when the weather got good and we was able to make another turn, more than one cut, well, we cut, and she'd run out there 55, 60 yards, and she'd spin around and look back at me. Well, this whole summer has been one and done, one and done. Kill a squirrel, put them up. Make two trees, put them up. Well, she did good on that first cut. Well, it got time to make another cut. Well, here I am. I've conditioned her all summer to make one cut and be done. So I'd have to get me a switch and shush, run her off. Not that she didn't want to go or anything like that. It's just she didn't know. She was expecting to go to the truck. I felt like after.
Well, that'd been the game all summer.
That's it. I mean, that's what we've done all summer, and those kind of problems just kind of resonated into the winter. But I made up my mind that it don't matter how that dog's bred. It don't matter anything. I'm not worried about a hunt. I'm not worried about anything. If that dog's got a terrible birthday, I'm not going to fool with it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to start another dog in the summer. Just I'm not doing it.
So
It
how
was
what birthdays are you looking for?
well, it's this is my opinion. You know, the USDC World is end of March, so I want something with an April or May birthday. You know, maybe June, but anything other than that, you start. You want those dogs as close to those age limits as you can get. So, Jamestown is, to me, that's the biggest hunt there is, and you want that dog as close to 2 years old as you can get it for Jamestown. So when everything was geared toward Jamestown, we wanted a puppy born anytime after the the first week of December. We wanted our puppies to be born mid to end December, or up until about March or April. Okay. So that would be, you'd have a 22, 23-month old, 24-month old puppy for that Jamestown. Well, now they got the UMCA hunt in February, and they got the USDC hunt in March. So I'm gonna shoot for an April birthday now, and I can get 2 kill seasons on that puppy, or one good kill season, and I can start into my second kill season for Jamestown. That puppy will be 20 months old, 19 months old at Jamestown. Okay. At the UMCA World, it'll be a little bit older, and then it'll be perfect for the USDC World. So from here on out, I'm going to shoot for, April or May if I can. It's just, man, it's a lot. It is a lot on a puppy. It's you're flirting with disaster hunting down here in the summer anyway, just snakes and alligators. So, but I'm gonna kind of gear from here on out. I'm gonna gear all my pups to a April birthday if it's all possible, And if I can't get that done, I'm just gonna leave it alone, because I'm not starting another young dog in the summer. It's just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
That's the plan moving forward.
Well, do you have any advice on for anybody that might be dealing with a dog maybe that likes to jack trees?
I don't know if you can fix that. No, I just be honest. It's going to take somebody smarter than me to fix it. I don't know what you do. I think a lot of that though is like, well, I know when dogs get hot, they want to chew and jack and things like that, and I feel like you get that dog pretty quick when they're young, and don't let them just sit there and just melt down treeing and stuff, and back them up away from the tree a little bit and leash them back and stuff. Maybe that'll stop it before it ever starts. I don't like that. I had a guy at Jamestown tell me that was a deal breaker for him. He would call one in a minute for jacking. But I don't know that there's a surefire way to fix that. I think a lot of these problems people have with these dogs, once you let them get started doing that mess, it's and I may be wrong about it, but I feel like I don't know how a man would fix that. I really don't. I, I have never had one really do it much.
Okay. Well, what about independence? Like what do you do? Do you train intentionally to try to keep your pups to be an independent dog, or do you work on anything like that getting ready to go to a hunt?
I tell you what I think about that. I feel like these you start these dogs by themselves, and you kill them 35, 40 squirrels before you ever let them be around another dog. And I feel like if that dog can do it on its own, and I think that they tend to be independent if you train them by themselves. Like I've never been a fan of starting a pup with a dog and things like that, because I feel like that imprints something in that dog's mind that they just kind of gravitate toward a dog. Like a lot of people take an old dog and start pups with it and things like that, and that's just something that I would never do. I mean, I noticed back years ago when we came to hunted and stuff, and we started a pup, that our dogs would split tree a lot from the other dogs because we hunted them by ourselves, by themselves. And I just feel like when you hunt a dog by itself, you make sure that pup's handled. If you do take it with a dog, you make sure that dog's handled. You hunt with somebody that's like-minded to you, that makes sure that the dogs is handled and stuff like that before they go to putting gun pressure on them and things like that. I feel like gun pressure, that dog knows that game is coming out of that tree when that gun's shooting. And I feel like gun pressure ruins more dogs than anything. If you hunting with somebody and they hunt a dog, you're hunting a dog, I think you just got to make sure that all your handles is made before you start doing the shooting, and if you can't do that, then it's better just to hunt by yourself, but that gun is going to set you up for failure more than anything you could do, I think, because it knows it relates that to a squirrel hitting the ground, and I single them out and I hunt them by themselves a lot. And when I do introduce that dog to company, I just make sure that I'm hunting with somebody that's got the same goals as I do, that wants to hunt a dog, hunt it correct, and those kind of things. I had a situation with Wheezy this year, and it was an honest mistake. She had this was right before Jamestown too, and she went left-handed, and we was running out of woods, and I had her in the woods with another dog, and she was coming back. I was trying to get her back to me, calling her and stuff, trying to get her back in the woods, and as I was getting her back, this guy that was with me, his dog came treed, and he seen the squirrel and he shot as I was getting her back in. Well, she, in my mind, thought that I wanted her to come get on that tree because of that guy shot about the time she was coming back into me. And he didn't do it on purpose, it was just an honest mistake. But, the stars lined up for a worst case scenario situation, and that's what happened. And so I was like, dang, so, and it was running out of daylight, so I had to put her up like that and didn't get a chance to fix it. So the next day we go hunting, we cut the dogs loose, and they jam a hot squirrel right there together, and you can't make that correction then. Like, what do you do when they run up on one hot off the leash like that? You can't make it then. So anyway, it fooled around. We hunted all day that day, and I got to make that correction, later on that day, and it worked itself out, but you just got to be real independence. I think a lot of it's in a dog, but I think when you train them by themselves, they don't depend on other dogs as much. If it's a bad day and the dogs are struggling to get treed and stuff, I feel like your dog's more prone to go to a dog that's getting treed and stuff if it can't get treed on its own, and so I'm not saying that that's right, but that's just my opinion. and I train mine by themselves. I aggravate some people sometimes because I won't turn my young dogs loose with theirs and things like that. But it just I don't like really hunting a dog with other dogs all the time, even an old dog. I like to keep them by themselves, and it's just always worked for me. I'm gonna stick with it, I guess.
I hear you. Well, we're creeping up on our hour of time here. Is there anything you'd like to talk about before we call her quits?
No, I just I want to thank those guys at Jamestown this year, man. They did a fine job up there. Man, that new board and new president, and man, I'm telling you, it's just the atmosphere was just better. I mean, it just seemed like it's the best hunt I've been to in a long time, and which I've always loved Jamestown, but man, that they Samuel and John and them guys getting out and beating the bushes, getting places to take folks hunting, and I mean, man, they did a good job. It's a good place, man. They're making some changes up there and doing some things, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds. I think everybody ought to come out and give it a shot and at least see what's going on up there. It's not like it used to be.
Yeah, it seems like they've breathed some new life into the organization again.
Man, I tell you, those guys did a fine job, man. Everything was well ran. There was no hiccups, man. I don't think they had a single issue that I know of with a landowner or anybody. I mean, it went off without a hitch. I mean, it was just a really, really good hunt. And that place that's a lot of history there, and I just, man, I want to see it grow, and I'd like to see all the people that got away from it get back to it, and without all the fussing and bickering and things. We all don't have to agree on everything, but when everybody's got having a good time on their mind and being a blessing to somebody and stuff. I think that's what it's all about, man. It ain't about us anymore. It's about our kids coming on and passing this on to somebody in the future. And I just like to encourage everybody to come out and check it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dewayne, I guess I hadn't congratulated you either on your recent success, but congratulations on your hunt win, and man, I'd sure like to thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed getting to have a chat with you, and I'm sure all the listeners will enjoy listening as well.
Well, I've enjoyed it also, and I appreciate it.
Yep. Well, if we ain't got nothing else to talk about, I guess we'll call her quits.
All right.
All right, everybody. Take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.